as they were having dinner in 1985 with President Reagan, Reagan said, you know, I wish I could get in a helicopter and I could fly over the United States with Mikhail Gorbachev. I wish we could stop in people's homes and Gorbachev could see that we have cars in every driveway, we have boats in the driveway. He could see how the people lived in clean homes and they lived in nice homes. If Gorbachev could see this, Ronald Reagan said, I believe he might change his ways and the Soviet Union may crumble, or at least the communism will crumble, and capitalism and democracy will spread across the Soviet Union. You see, Ronald Reagan at that dinner in 1985, he was an optimist. He was an optimist, but George Will and Bob Novak, whenever he said it, looked at each other and kind of smirked. I thought, well, this is just another case of the naive, out-of-touch president not being in touch with reality. How wrong they were. He was more in touch with reality than anyone else because he was an optimist. He knew born in the hearts of people, of all men, regardless of what country you're born in, whether it be the United States of America or the USSR, born in your heart is a desire to be free. Born in your heart is a desire to build and grow. Reagan was an optimist and he knew this. And he had to be an optimist. He took over the country at a time when it was not an optimistic nation. It was at the end of the decade of the 1970s. The United States had a cloud of Watergate hanging over the White House. It had a cloud of Vietnam hanging over the White House. The economy was so bad in the years prior to Reagan becoming president that economists came up with something called the misery index. That's how bad our economy was. And the misery index told us in number figures how bad the economy was. And then all of a sudden, the 40th president of the United States walks on the scene with optimism. And this is the lesson I want you to draw from the life of Ronald Reagan. You may be in the middle of horrible circumstances, as Reagan could have potentially been, but he came to the table and he came to the office of President of the United States believing that communism could fall, believing in America, because he was an optimist. It's almost an insult to say that the legacy of Reagan is that he was an optimist, because every sixth person watching this program perhaps is an optimist. If you don't do something about it, though, that's where Reagan made the difference. It means nothing. Ronald Reagan stood at the Brandenburg Gate in Germany at the Berlin Wall, and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. You see, that was not written into Reagan's speech. He wrote it in there. His speechmakers crossed it out. He put it back in. His speechmakers crossed it out. He put it back in. His speechmakers crossed it back out. And finally, he said, fine, don't put it in. I'm still going to say it. Because, see, his speechmakers weren't an optimist. He thought there was no way Gorbachev would tear down that wall. Ronald Reagan was an optimist. And at the Brandenburg Gate, he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Months after his presidency, Gorbachev did exactly that. Would he have done that if Reagan wasn't an optimist and hadn't made that challenge? Reagan made us proud to be Americans again. When the flag went by, we all stood a little bit taller. He reminded us of the mission of freedom. He had a quote where he used to say, it's morning in America. And what he was saying is, morning is a time of optimism. The dark days are behind us. It is morning in America. He kindled the hope of America once again with his optimism. And that is the lesson of President Ronald Reagan. When others worried, he persevered. When others weakened, he stood tall. When others stepped back, he stood forward. Why? Optimism.